everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Speakeasy podcast. My name is Kate, otherwise known as Naritaki.
And I'm Alan, otherwise known as Hisui.
We are from reversethieves.com, and you can go there to get multiple blog posts every week, as well as the archive for all of our podcasts. And we don't have any little podcasts going on right now because we're kind of in the middle of the new season, but we also have a YouTube channel, which Al is going to start posting some stuff on, so.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing a new thing called Manga Day Keeps the Doctor Away, and just reviewing a chapter of, just various manga once a day, little videos. We'll see how it goes, see how much people like it, see how much I'm like, man, I really want to do this every day, or man, I'm really bored with this. So, seems like a fun little experiment. If you would like to contact us, maybe to tell us what titles you'd like to see on there, ask us questions, or suggest topics for future speakeasies, please just email us at reversethieves@gmail.com, or you can contact us on Twitter. I'm HisuiRT.
And I'm NaritakiRT. So today's topic is going to be Crunchyroll's new manga section, which they partnered with Kodansha to bring to us. Sort of a subscription model to manga, very new, everybody's very excited. It hasn't even been out a month yet, but we have been using it, and it's kind of the hot topic right now, so we thought we'd kind of talk about it in general and then review the app itself later in the show. But first, we have our interrogation room question, which is, do you think there is another genre of manga that could break into the mainstream besides shonen fighting? I guess they're not including Sailor Moon as a breakout. Do you think, or is that an exception?
Well, do you think...
I mean, it's kind of shonen fighting-esque, but it's got the romance and
I'd say it's more on the shoujo side, so... I
mean, it obviously is, but I'm wondering, is that just an anomaly, or is there any other big mainstream? Because the ones you usually think of are Dragon Ball, and right now Attack on Titan is literally the size of a Titan. It's so big, it's everywhere.
And Naruto was this decently mainstream. I mean, I don't think it ever reached, even at its height, ever reached Dragon Ball status. But I mean, if you asked a lot of kids, they'd, much of them would know. And
it's still around now. I think a lot of people are still into it. It's just not really people that we know. So it hasn't gone away. But okay, so back to the question itself. Is there a genre that's just ripe for the picking? It's definitely not mecha. I know that is. I know what it's not. It's not sports and it's not mecha.
Yeah, it's not sports because other than a few select people, if you show a sports fan sports anime, they're meh. And I think a lot of people had hoped that Drops of God would break out and be kind of the success that it was in Asia. A lot of wine magazines wrote it up, but it still never really caught on with anybody other than the manga mafia.
I wonder, though, if something okay, if we take, say, American comics and, or American graphic novels, and, that is a booming business right now. It is really big and it's growing. So if we maybe look at, what there is popular, I guess it's possible, because superheroes aren't the only thing. I mean, they're in their own league, so I wonder if, it'd always be sort of shonen fighting and then second tier at some point. But, things that have made New York Times bestseller lists are, science fiction, for, Saga, for example, American comic-wise.
What's funny is to totally get back on, a conversation the audience hasn't heard. Two conversations. One, you said there were two things that were very popular. Sci-fi and Western. And that was
Wild West. Yeah. It's like up and coming, I would say. Like that seems to be something that a lot of people are dabbling in at the moment.
And it was funny because in a completely different conversation we had a while ago, I mentioned that like every one of the big authors I know in Shonen Jump has like tried a Western, like a, once again, Wild West series at least once, and they never go anywhere.
I hope that is not the case, for all the American comics that are sort of picking up on that aesthetic at the moment. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, but then it would still be shonen fighting, so it doesn't even count.
Oh, true. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
That you mentioned science fiction. And then I was like, man, maybe Western. But no, one, it would be shonen fighting. It would most probably be, well, there's stuff like Green Blood, which is very seinen and Western, and possibly more would have an appeal to a, like, American comic especially an indie comic reading audience. If somehow, like, there was a big Western boom, I almost feel like something seinen-y like that would probably be a better fit for that kind of indie comic reading crowd than, say, Shonen Jump!
Right, but indie comics is not the mainstream. That's not going to be busting out to make tons and tons and tons of money. That's like almost the opposite. So, I don't know. Sometimes things just click at the right time. And like I said, I mentioned science fiction because I'm sure any American right now knows it's like science fiction movies are really big right now. Lots of them coming out. So science fiction is sort of on the rise. And we're back in, it's like an ebb and flow of these things. So like possibly right now, if the right science fiction manga came out, maybe that science fiction manga is Space Bros. Like
that would be nice.
That would be really nice. But since it's not licensed technically, I mean, we'll get into that. And actually related to this topic that we have, about Crunchyroll manga. But yeah, like I don't know if there's something like that could sort of bridge that gap. Okay, so our topic again is Crunchyroll getting into the manga business. So we are going to take a quick musical break, and then we will be back. All right, everybody, we're back. So the first part of the Speakeasy, talking about Crunchyroll manga, I think we're going to try to just tackle it in general and kind of how we got to this point and what's different about it than, say, Crunchyroll anime, and, just kind of various feelings about it and where it could go and what it's doing differently. So, yes, go.
I would just like to state before we begin, we have said it on this podcast like a dozen times, but I feel like it's worth saying one more time that, oh my gosh, look what happened. It's almost like the manga industry is continually like 3 to 5 years behind the anime industry and does the same beats once again. Oh, there's a piracy problem. And the industry goes, no, there isn't. We're safe. We're not too worried about it. Then it gets bigger, and they're like, oh my god, piracy, dirty pirates. Why do you gotta be pirating all the time? And like a big backlash after like a drop, like after a big kind of bubble burst. And then online is too hard to figure out, and an online subscription service, not gonna happen with the Japanese. Then, alright, we'll let you buy individual episodes/chapters, but no subscription service. All right, here's a subscription service.
It almost feels like also with this, Crunchyroll is the first one doing a subscription service, but generally I think that means it's just a matter of time before the dominoes start to fall for the other big English licensors.
But when you say not as big a scale as this, but I feel a lot of people would go, oh, but how about Shonen Jump? The online Shonen Jump being day and date. That's not as wide a breadth and doesn't really have as much back catalog, but I think that's definitely a precursor to this.
That's a good point. And it is kind of a subscription, sort of. You're still paying for individual volumes, every month. You're paying for each magazine, in quotation marks, of Shonen Jump because, because you're only getting one thing. And you don't get anything older than what you start at. Just the week that you start, that's when your reading starts. So you can't have anything that's in the past. But you're right. That's a great precedent because especially, Shonen Jump is so big and it has the big titles. We mentioned Naruto before and like One Piece. So having those come out day and date, I think is awesome. And I think that was certainly a step in the right direction. And people they started to recognize that sometimes people just want to read things. They just want to read them. They don't necessarily want to own them. And that's okay. And you can just, get your fix and be done with it. And you don't have to worry about, buying the next volume to have on your shelf. But then Crunchyroll and Kodansha have just made my day when I read that they were going to be doing this. So Crunchyroll comes out and and Kodansha come together and they decide that they're going to do subscription service. And at first I was really suspicious. I was like, oh, this isn't going to be what we want, or it's going to be crazy, or it's going to be expensive or terrible. But, from what I can see, they did it right. They launched with 12 titles. The price is right. You can get all the manga you want for $5 a month. And the thing is that even as they add titles, it's still $5 a month. So it doesn't matter how much ends up being on there. And so it's comparable to Crunchyroll's anime service, about, similar in price. It's just perfect. It's exactly what I want. I think it's what everybody wants, is to just be able to go and read whatever's available easily, quickly, have the back catalog, have the new chapters. I mean, not only is Kodansha putting up, all the old books of these titles, you're also getting the same chapter from Japan at the same time. So, they pretty much they're slowly but surely eliminating any need for you to do anything else.
That was one of the big benefits of the anime section of Crunchyroll, was how much have you watched a fan sub since that kind of took place?
Once simulcasting came in, I almost never watch.
I think the only thing we're watching is Precure.
Yep.
And it's just because it's Precure and it's never going to come over here.
But I think there is potential for that to end up on Crunchyroll eventually.
Yeah, I mean, but I remember because we were having a conversation and my roommate was complaining about VLC, and I had realized I had not watched anything on VLC long enough I was like, I haven't used VLC in so long that I don't know what you're talking about. Because I watch everything that I watch anime-wise on either Hulu or Crunchyroll.
Exactly. So it completely changed the way I watched anime. And it's only been a couple of weeks, obviously, since the Crunchyroll manga service came out. So I can't say that has changed the way that I read manga. But I kind of fully expect that a year from now I will be saying that. The only real difference and real problem, and I'm going to say problem in quotation marks there, is that Crunchyroll anime sort of has the advantage of not being affiliated with any publisher or licensor. So on the anime side, they pretty much, get whatever. They just announced that One Piece is going to be streaming on Crunchyroll. So they can grab from anywhere, anybody that is willing to deal with them, that's what they can get, and to simulcast or to just put into their back catalog. Whereas the manga section is seemingly linked with Kodansha. I don't know if that's going to continue, if it's always going to be that way, but that sort of changes the dynamic of what's going to be available there. Obviously, if it's something Kodansha owns, you're good. It might end up on there, but if it's some other publisher, at this point, it's really unclear, I think. if it's just sort of a partnership in like, hey, the launch titles are all Kodansha titles, and Kodansha titles are going to be on Crunchyroll from now on, but then later on other companies will be added to that. I don't know. I mean, that's obviously a big question mark here at the beginning. But if it is just Kodansha, it's a little bit more limiting. Limiting in quotation marks because, like, Kodansha's library is quite vast.
I mean, things could go wrong. They always could. But my hope is that if other people don't sign on, at least they might try to keep up with the Joneses. Like, we might see Viz being like, well, if that's how you're gonna play it, here's Service, and here's all these Shueisha and Shogakukan titles, and I can finally have my, day and date Shonen Sunday titles.
Well, it's also going to be interesting because Crunchyroll manga section is setting a different precedent, because there are titles on there that Kodansha has not licensed for book release in the US. And other like digital manga has done this a little bit as well. They've, released things digitally, but these are bigger titles. And so Viz has only really done it in like one-shots and a couple of the things that they've run in the weekly Shonen Jump online magazine. We've seen it a little bit there, but Crunchyroll, I mean, the big one to me was Space Brothers is one of their starting lineup, and that's something that not only is it not the manga is not licensed for the US, I don't expect it to be. Even with it on here, I don't really expect it to be.
I wouldn't say that it's not as big as Space Brothers, but I'd say that Yamada and the Seven Witches also being on there is pretty not small potatoes. They had that promo video. There might be an anime in the future. I've had several talks with people, and they seem to think that the lady who does her series are a bit too long and a bit too popular in Japan to be normally licensed in like book format. So this kind of is probably the best way that at least they could test the waters, because I feel like she's just a author that, like, I'm not sure they would want to take a risk on a physical release, but they might be like, well, let's see how this does digitally.
Yamada and the Seven Witches, at least right now, is not that long, whereas Space Brothers is already in like book 30 or something ridiculous. So I think there is a little bit of a difference there, and like it's long, it's still going, and in any case, they have these titles that they've not licensed for book release, but they're things that people have been asking for. People want them. You hear people talk about them a lot, both of these titles. I'm hoping that also sets, like maybe a trend, because certainly I would like Viz to be doing such things more often. Things that I want, okay? I want the things that I want, that nobody wants them, and this might be a way to finally get them. Because I have to say, the stuff that is on there right now, I was really proud of them. I think they had a good starting lineup. It's very strong, because Attack on Titan and Fairy Tail, those are big, big, big titles.
I wouldn't discount UQ Holder, only because, well, it's Ken Nakamatsu. Ken Nakamatsu titles have always done well back when they were Del Rey manga and when they're Kodansha manga. That's always been a really big seller. So the sequel to Negima is not and it's just started. It's only 11 chapters in, so it's not you don't have to read your fan scan. You can read this thing. They're not set in their ways of, but that's how they translated in the fan scan. So I feel like that's another big, good title.
And I felt like the dozen that they have is a diverse bunch of titles. Like, there's romance, there's comedy, there's seinen. Like we said, there's these kind of shonen fighting, and Attack on Titan is the biggest thing that's happened in a long time, and like everybody's obsessed with it. So it is perfect timing for them to release it in this manner, because the anime just finished up. Everybody is ravenous for more of the story. So it's like it's a perfect time for them to do this.
Oh, and 2 titles you might not be aware of, but I read Fort of Apocalypse is a zombie manga, which not really appealing to us, but if it seems like one of those things, if it just happens to get into the right people's hands, might be something, especially in kind of a smorgasbord thing, like, oh, well, I read some Attack on Titan. Oh, what's this one? And I mean, zombies are still a big thing in the US, so that has a chance, maybe not to be like Walking Dead or anything crazy, I'm not saying like that, but maybe have like a small cult following of manga fans who are also big into zombies picking that up and kind of making a nice little cult following. And As the Gods Will, the second series kind of has a Gancy kind of people have to play in deadly games thing.
So it's kind of like a little horror in there as well. I thought it was just a good mix of things so that anybody could find something, 1 title, 2 titles that they would want to read, in addition to, maybe that one that really attracted them. And the smart thing about subscription, which obviously everybody else is discounting by not having it, is probably, hopefully, what they see in the Weekly Shonen Jump online magazine is that when you have a subscription, you try other things that you might not have tried otherwise, and then you become a fan of them, and then you buy stuff, and then you try more things, and you buy more things. Like, it's because it's there to be taken, people read it. That's why scanlation sites work so well, is because you can just go and read whatever, and then you keep reading, and then you finish the one thing you were reading, and then there's another one waiting for you. So,
and they have there's a lot of good. Well, if you like this popular title, you might like this solid but less popular, less well-known title. Like you like Fairy Tail. And so you like shonen fighting, maybe you'll like 7 Deadly Sins.
Does it do that, or you're just saying?
I'm just saying that.
Yeah, one of the things I did notice that, I mean, it is in its infancy, obviously, but it's very bare bones at the moment. There's not a lot of, descriptions or, So you do go in a little bit blind, but most of the titles, I feel like people have heard of, so maybe not everything. But again, that's where hey, well, I'll just try this because I have a subscription, so why not, kind of comes in. The other thing about Crunchyroll manga is that it's a little bit different from the anime section, even though you can kind of pay for both at the same time, or you can do, the all access pass, which includes the dramas. But kind of the way they work is almost the opposite of each other, because for Crunchyroll anime, you're really paying for the new episode, and so you don't have to wait for the new episode. Where manga is it's the opposite. You're paying for all the old stuff, and the new chapter is free.
Well, I did notice that there are certain titles that you basically can sample a little at the beginning and then just the stuff that isn't compiled in books. Like Fairy Tail only has 26 chapters because it's just the latest 26. Or
But you're still only the first chapter, or only the newest chapter is free, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The newest ones, yeah. Or but something like Space Bros, they go from chapter 1 to 119, and then they jump to 220. So it's essentially if you've never read fan scans, then you can just start and, get up the first 12 volumes, which is nothing to scoff at. But if you have been reading the scans of fan, then you can just jump in and get the newest chapter and basically be like, all right, fan scan, I don't have to read you no more. I can get the real deal.
And I think it's really smart of them to have the latest chapter be free, because it cuts the fan scan off at the legs. Even for those people who don't want to pay, they still have a place to legally go and read it. And that's just the most important thing, so that you can just go and read it. I do think that if they want to encourage people to read their titles, that the first chapter or the first book should also always just be free to read. Because, if you've never read any of this stuff and you want to read the latest chapters, there's nothing to really, encourage you to do that, to discover a title, to without paying for it just to sample it. I think that would be smart of them. Of course, again, it's not even been out a month yet, so there are these gaps. But I was pretty impressed with how much was already up there. Like you mentioned Space Bros, and like some things that are not that long yet, like Yamada and the Seven Witches or Seven Deadly Sins. All of it's already there because there wasn't, tons and tons of back catalog to go through. So it's like already there.
And once again, UQ holder, only 11 chapters out, even in Japan. So basically, you start from the beginning, can read up to what's available. And like Seven Deadly Sins, 55 chapters. Pretty, I'm sure that if you were dedicated and you took a weekend, you could be up to date with without even breaking a sweat.
But yeah, so some things there are gaps, but I have a feeling that those will go away quickly. I at least I hope. Mm-hmm. You want to get there as fast as you can, and I thought that they did a good job just getting so much there, and it's pretty good quality. So like.
And they said
I don't think you're gonna miss any. I don't think you're gonna miss anything about your fan scan from what I've seen.
You did mention the only thing that you might be missing is no color pages.
Yeah, I thought that was a weird, and I didn't read out every title. So if some of them have them, somebody let me know. But the ones that I did read, all the color pages were not. They were not in color. They were just sort of when you kind of buy like a reprint or whatever, it's just a gray page, or a lot of the US stuff doesn't put color pages in, so it's just the grayscale. So everything I read had that instead of the color pages, and then there's no really reason for that, so it's just a nice touch to have them in color because it's digital, so it doesn't matter, it doesn't cost extra money or anything, so I think that would be a nice addition.
Those color pixels are so much more expensive, Kate. And they did mention that this is hardly all that you're going to be seeing, that they'd be adding, I think it was like 50 titles by next year.
By next summer. So that's only really like 6 months or so from now.
So yeah, there's a whole bunch of titles on their way. So I'm kind of curious how much of it is going to be new stuff, how much is going to be kind of like old classics.
Yeah, that I would say that's the only thing that was kind of missing from the starting lineup so far was like some sort of like some classic, like.
But I almost feel like it might have actually been better to do it this way. Basically, just throw out there in your first wave everything that's the new hotness, or at least been running. Because anything that tends to be really long in this thing has an anime. And everything else tends to be the new hotness. Except for The Town Where You Live. But that's based on Suzaka, which was fairly popular in the US, and that had an anime. And it's a spin-off of that series, so it's not like it doesn't have any kind of anime or American publishing roots. So I feel like you want to kind of that's kind of how Crunchyroll took off. They had Naruto, and they had all these other big titles, and then when people regularly started signing up and regularly going there, that's when they started to take more risks and put in weirder shows, older shows. So I'm thinking that if that formula worked, if what hooks them is the big titles, we get a lot of subscriptions, and then we fill out the catalog with, the smaller stuff that, is going to be more appreciated by, the weirder connoisseurs. And if people are regularly coming, like you said, they might go, normally I don't read old manga, but if it's free, I'll give this one like 5 chapters. Maybe I'll change my mind about older manga.
It'll change their lives, is what it'll do. How does this compare to J-manga, and is it, what's it doing right, and is it going to go the way of J-manga? And I don't think so. I think that they have nailed it, really. Because,
just having Fairy Tail and Attack on Titan totally makes it different than J-manga. And it being subscription. Being that smorgasbord model.
And even just that barrier of weirdness about how to pay and points and blah, blah, blah. All this stuff you got to remember. It's just, nobody wants to do that. Imagine if and I don't even have cable, but imagine if cable was some weird point system where you had to like pay for different like shows and channels and like
it's everything on cable was like pay-per-view essentially.
It's just confusing. And things are different prices and like it's just weird, and I don't think anybody's surprised that J manga went away. I think everybody was sad about it, but
because there were a lot of titles there that just you're like, we're probably never going to see that in English again.
Right. And it was a shame that it just couldn't work itself out. But from the beginning, everybody was like, it needs to be this. It needs to be a subscription model. And it did. That's what it needed to be.
I mean, I think they were trying to like launch J-Manga 7 at the end, but by that time, they were just so in the hole that and this is kind of like, this is what J-Manga 7 could have been.
Exactly. I think that's what people wanted from it. They had high hopes for it, but it seems as though Kodansha, kind of in a shocking turn, I have to admit, has their finger on the pulse
I think
of what's going on, which, no offense, guys, but I am really impressed because up until like a few months ago, I wasn't even sure Kodansha knew how to use social media properly. So
obviously everybody who knew how to use the internet was working on this.
yes, good job, guys.
They're like, sorry, guy who knows how to use Twitter, you have to work on this manga site.
But I'm so proud of you for finally figuring it out. And, you know, I think slowly but surely they're kind of honing their abilities here and concentrating their efforts in the right channels. Because don't you feel like at first when you heard Kodansha was coming back, you were kind of like, yeah, all right, good luck with that, sure. How is this different from Del Rey, and is it going to go away too?
I guess this is probably better than Tokyo Pop coming back.
Yes, no, 100% yes to that. But yeah, you just, I didn't have a lot of faith, to be perfectly honest, but that is changing. I'm very excited.
You proved me wrong.
Yeah, because this is the only manga site that I'm actively participating in now. I mean, I used to have a weekly Shonen Jump subscription, and I don't have that anymore. And, I kind of had I've never really embraced the digital manga thing yet, because I still don't have, like, a tablet or anything, so, but this was just this is just too good to pass up. Why wouldn't I?
Oh, the Space Bros.
Yes, all the mangas for $4.99, like, forever and evers. And I like the idea that if it doesn't have something you want now, probably next month. I'm going to be curious to see if they have like kind of a regular schedule of announcing things. Every month they add 5 or so. I don't know what it would be, 2 even, whatever it is. I'm curious to see if they try to give it some sort of regularity, because then I think that would build anticipation. It would get people excited that, say, at the first of every month, they announce these 2 new titles or something like that.
I mean, if they're going to get up to 50 by next summer, I mean, they're going to have to do more than 2 a month. Well, unless there's like some big boosh.
I was just using it as an example. I mean, I just would like to see them sort of do it in some sort of regular fashion, because then you kind of know on the first you're going to get 2 new titles. What are they going to be? Everybody's excited. They could put out hints. Use the media. Everyone will be excited. And I'm also going to be curious to see if they'll tell us or not, but how this helps the sales of the books that are released in English versus obviously stuff that isn't getting a physical release. There can be no difference. They're going to be making they're going to make 100% profit because they weren't making any before. But yeah, I wonder if they're going to see a big jump in things that are already selling like crazy. And if they do, will they even tell us? And also how much of an effect the Crunchyroll manga subscription is going to have on things getting a physical release.
Yeah.
Are they going to be looking at those numbers? Are they going to make a difference? What is, are titles on there, possibly going to get a physical release, or no, we're, I'm sure they don't have an answer for that. I'm sure if it's like the demand was there, we're going to do it. But I'm going to be curious to see kind of how far down the line we're going to see the results of something being popular on the subscription.
But I do feel that if you like certain titles, it's a bit of an easier pitch to be like, hey, you pay $5 a month and you can get into Space Bros, as opposed to, it just seems a simpler way to get people into legitimate stuff than like, you can get into Space Bros and it's, $30 and you gotta go and buy individual books. So, with big titles like Space Brothers, I think it's a nice way to possibly get in people at like a reasonable price.
And I'll be wondering, or actually, sorry, I'll be crossing my fingers and hoping that this will also lead to them maybe putting little bonus chapters, extras for titles, as well as like one-shots that, never get collected. Just sort of like, again, how Viz has done a little bit.
I know there's at least one or two Yamada and the Seven Witches bonus chapters. They're on the site, so you can get those. They don't have like the omake and the stuff so far, but that you would only get in a tankobon. But at least they have bonus chapters, which is definitely not anything to scoff at.
All right, so we are going to take a quick break for the food for thought, which is, what is the next company you'd like to see have a subscription model or maybe be added to Crunchyroll manga? Of course, that's the better option. Okay, we'll take a quick break and then we'll be back.
We are back, and our food for thought was, if you could have some other publisher use a buffet system, like the one we see for Crunchyroll and Kodansha, which publisher would it be?
Viz, hands down. Or wait, are we talking about Japanese publisher?
Answer how you like.
Okay, definitely Viz, specifically because they release a lot of really long shoujo titles, which I don't want to own the entire run of. I just really want to read them. And so I'm slowly getting them from the library, but if I could just bam, quick go through them online, I would totally be there.
You'd be like, here's my money.
Yes.
Just slap them and give me my service.
Give me my shoujo romances. Give them to me.
I have to agree with you, but for different reasons. As I mentioned in the last half, give me my frickin' Sunday, you bleeps. Because I'm like, oh, they'll never give up on Shonen Jump. But Shonen Sunday, they're like, yeah, I guess we got some titles. But if they had a smorgasbord thing, they'd almost be forced to throw on some Shonen Sunday titles.
If they were day and date with Conan, I also might make an exception.
I would throw in money to be day and date with Hayate and what do you call it? And I feel like there are also some other Sunday titles that might not be strong enough for a physical release, but if they had, kind of like how Space Brothers, way too long or way too obscure to be normally released, might be able to be released that way. And I'd love to see a little more of what Sunday has to offer besides what we get.
And Viz is the obvious pick just because they're so big. They, have all the Shueisha and Shogakukan titles, so it's a really big catalog of stuff. So, of course, that makes the most sense. All right, so now in the second half, we're really going to be talking about reviewing the actual Crunchyroll reader and app, because Al has a tablet, so we're, going to be reviewing it from the computer side and also the app side. And, I know we don't do a lot of reviews on the Speakeasy, but I think in this case it's really relevant to talk about, how it's functioning, because I feel as though one of the things that people really like about scanlation sites is how easy they are to quickly get through manga, to move to the next page, to read it. Like, the readability on scanlation sites is just so comfortable that that's what, people should be mimicking, because that's what people like.
And I remember one of the big complaints about a lot of the older services is that, it does feel like you have some kind of, old Android being like, here is your individual page, when do you want the next page? Oh, and by the way, I'm going to make it very hard and very flash-intensive to get you to see anything. So I know that keeps some people out of, non-tablety, the PC side especially.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do feel as though, in general, the computer user is often pushed to the wayside when working on these things, and that's really foolish, because not everybody owns a tablet yet or uses apps to read, so it's something that people always put second, but they shouldn't be. How
hard was it for you to read the manga on your Mac?
Because I'm using a Mac, but I don't have a PC to compare it with, so I don't really have
I used
anything.
it on the PC in my upstairs, and I found it really easy because I had a wheel, whereas I don't think your mouse has a wheel. Because if you have a wheel, if you just go, you can just wheel up and down through the pages.
Oh, but I just did it full screen mode.
Oh, okay.
You had to wheel down the pages?
Oh, no. If I hit down on the wheel, it just went to the next page.
Oh, the second page.
Yeah.
Not just the top and bottom.
Yeah.
Page. Oh, okay.
And I was like, man, I'm not sure I wouldn't be as anywhere near as seamless if I didn't have the wheel, because the wheel just made it I didn't even have to click on the pages. I just
I don't have to click. You can use your arrows.
Oh, okay.
Just like scanlation sites, you can use your arrows.
Okay, I didn't realize that, because I started using the wheel and I just would open up a chapter and just wheel through it.
But just talking about the being not having good functionality, I think that when I was using the Weekly Shonen Jump subscription, it wasn't terrible or anything. It was okay, but it's still cumbersome and kind of overly gaudy if you're not in full screen mode. And so it's oh my god, why I don't need it's almost like they're over complicating things, and you just don't need to. People, in a way, bare bones is actually better, and I think that they pretty much got the balance right with the Crunchyroll one. First of all, it's not its own pop-out player or anything like that. It's just on the screen, and then you can go into full screen mode, and it's very basic, just forward, backward. There's a bar at the bottom for you to jump to pages, and there's a option for single page or spread. I have a huge monitor, so I always had everything on spreads, but I'm sure on tablet it's much easier to read as single pages. And that's it. And then also to the far left on the web version, there is a drop down for chapters, to jump to chapters, but that thing does not work very well at all. If there is anything I had a complaint with, is that thing is completely useless at the moment. So I was also using Chrome. What were you using, Al?
Firefox.
Okay, so that's also good. I don't know if did you have problems with that? Did you use it at all?
I didn't. If I was reading for any long period of time, I was usually on the tablet. I just basically I read essentially once or twice. I was let me just check if the new chapter of the Seven Deadly Sins or Yamada-chan was on, and I just read that So I only read like 2 or 3 of like the latest chapters of stuff.
Okay.
So I didn't like try to go back. Anytime I went to like long reading, I was using the tablet.
And then on the tablet, is there that jump to different chapters thing or not?
Not that I remember.
Because I really liked it in theory. Because again, it's one of those things that you see a lot on scanlation sites. How at the top it has the chapter that you're on, and then you can drop down and go and see all the other chapters that are available. So yes, please work on that. In theory, it should be really great, but the problems that I ran into is that it basically only listed the first 5 chapters, no matter what chapter you were on. Even if you were in the 3rd volume of the book, it listed chapters 1 through 5. So, like, that wasn't helpful at all. So it just seems like something that they're still working on.
They do have a guided view. So on the app, you can go basically from panel to panel, kind of like a lot of the comic sites. But if there's a way to bookmark stuff, but if there's a way to, it shows you what chapter you're on and what page you're on, but if there's a way to basically go to a different chapter, I don't know what it is. I can't. It is apparently not intuitive.
So I think that's something that they could work on. I thought that the full page view was awesome. It looked great. That was one of the things that I noticed throughout my reading, is that the image quality was really good. It was crisp. And the same thing with all the translation and text and everything. So I thought it looked really good every time that I was using it. And it didn't seem to take a long time to load. It was very quick. Not really noticeable at all, like load time. Maybe when you first kind of boot up whatever particular manga you're about to read, but otherwise it's a very quick movement. It is not just like JPEGs, that you usually see on scanlation sites. It is a little bit of Flash working in there. So being a little more fancy, because you can see it kind of loading if you start going really quickly, you can kind of see it loading as it goes. But on the app, you have the bar at the bottom that shows you like what page you're on, and then you can jump to pages.
No.
Okay, so you also have that on the web, which is somewhat helpful, but it's super glitchy. So sometimes, like, actually, strangely enough, the reading on the web works really well in full screen mode, but if you're not using full screen mode and it's just in the window, it was much more glitchy for me. Again, I'm using Chrome, so I'd be curious to see other people's long-term experiences on other browsers. But yeah, I had a lot of problems when I wasn't in full screen, especially trying to jump to pages where it just wouldn't work, refused to do it. So again, that was something that I was not quite working. But the basic, like, I'm opening this chapter from the first page and I'm just going to read it through. Very smooth, very enjoyable experience, very easy, and nothing lost quality, and it wasn't too small for me to read or anything like that. It was all really nice.
Everything looks nice on a Nexus 7. Every once in a while, just because it is a smaller screen, especially in some little boxes, but if you just double click on anything, it'll zoom in on that.
So you can use zoom on particular text boxes? Or it's just like the panel?
It'll basically just zoom in on it'll basically like triple size anything that you click in on. I did note, because I did ask a few people about their experiences, it was down for like one night. I remember Ink mentioning that. And yeah, but by the next morning when I checked in again, it was working. And I know a lot of people have problems where they basically tell the site to remember their password and never does. And basically if they ever close their window or turn off their computer, the next time they go in, it's supposed to remember their password, but it doesn't. When
reading on there, does it like save the chapter, or do you have to be connected to Wi-Fi in order to read?
You have to be connected to Wi-Fi in order to read. It doesn't save anything.
Okay, that's important to know. So what else, Sal? Did you have any problems or improvements?
I did like, I don't know where the app is. And then, because I tried to go to the Crunchyroll app, and then like 7 people told me, no, it's a separate app. And then I just found it. And that was probably the hardest thing. Just installed, you typed in your password, username and password, and boom, you were just reading. It's like I said, it doesn't have some of the functionality you have on the PC. You can't, basically if you want to go to another chapter, you have to exit out of the chapter you're in and go to the list again. And you can't jump pages. Or at least if you can, it's one of those things that is intuitive. You can bookmark stuff and favorite stuff.
So you can't do that online. Like I couldn't, there was no way for me to say like, oh, I'm only in the middle of a chapter, but I have to go. Mm-hmm. I couldn't save my place. And I tried to see if it would remember, because sometimes when you're watching anime, if you like leave, it'll remember where you were in the episode, but it doesn't remember where you are. So that was one of the things I was hoping that they'd add. So it sounds like it's available on the app. So hopefully that'll be coming over.
Yeah, you can just...
Or just being able... So you can also favorite a page?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally want to be able to do that online. I also thought that it'd be nice how on the anime side you can have a queue. You can add things to your queue so that you always just have the latest chapter in your queue. So when you go there, it's just all there for you, so that you're kind of know when things are updated. So I thought that would be something they should add too. I also think you're right. They should, from something you said earlier, was that they should have a thing where if you liked this, you'll like this. I think that especially because there's a lot of things on here that people aren't familiar with, or there's a few titles that people aren't familiar with, and it's not like the anime site. Again, it's kind of the opposite. So people can't really try things, and I think that that's a mistake. I want to reiterate that something that I said earlier. I think that's a mistake. I think that
you can try certain titles, and other titles you pretty much have to be in it to win it. Like you could try 7 Deadly Sins because it's all there, but you can't try. Well, I guess you could sample, but you can't sample from the beginning. A Town Where You Live.
Right, but what I'm saying is, even if you don't have a subscription, and I'm saying if you don't have a subscription, there's no incentive for you to, if you don't already kind of want one, there's no way for you to try the titles that are on there in order for you to get one, like to get excited about it without going to like piracy, which I mean, you can, like that is a totally thing you could do. And maybe that's what they think people will do, but it just seems smarter to just get people to go where they're always going to go, because you start going to a fan scan site. It's easy, you kind of get used to your routine. But I really think that,
like kind of how on Crunchyroll, they let you, if you don't have a subscription, you can like see like the first 5 minutes of the new episode, and then be like, and it goes, hey, if you like that, why don't you get a subscription so you can watch the newest episode right off the bat, and maybe have something like maybe like a page or two.
No, I think that they should have a whole chapter. Because, first of all, you cannot learn anything from like 2 pages of manga. That doesn't happen. And like, nobody, with the exception of like maybe like Slice of Life, like 4 Coma series, the whole point is that it's a series, it's a serialization, so you need to read the story from the beginning. So nobody who wants to read Yamada and the 7 Witches is gonna read chapter 93 first and be like, okay, that's where I'm gonna sample it. Like, nobody wants to do that. You want to read the first chapter.
Okay, there's some shallow people who just read stuff for character designs, but yes, no, your point is totally more important than the silliness of certain people.
It's like, if you want to get people to read stuff, they need to be able to read it from the beginning. And I totally get why you want to have the back catalog be for paid subscription. I get that. But the first chapter, at least, should be up there for free, just like the latest chapter is always free. I think that's smart. I think that gets people to explore it and try out new titles and say, oh my gosh, I really want to read this series. I'm going to get the subscription.
Especially since the first chapter is usually made to be really hooky and get you into it. I mean, if you're going to give away anything for free, that's probably the one you want to, like, whoa, that chapter was so awesome. He's my $5. I want to see where this goes.
And it, again, the whole first chapter, a whole one, like 30 pages or whatever it is. Because one of the problems that I always had with J-Manga for a lot of their previews, it was like 2 or 5 pages. That's not enough. That's not enough for me to know I'm going to like a manga. It's not. Like, at least a chapter.
Because it's usually also in a lot of those things, it's like the last 3 pages that are like, bum, 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 now you want to read this.
Because you just don't get a whole sense of the story. I mean, it's just stupid. So I think that would encourage people to get it. Because unlike what they're expecting, I am not interested in the Crunchyroll manga app for Attack on Titan. Because they're basically like, well, everybody's going to come for Attack on Titan, and then they'll read everything else. But you know what? There are going to be people that don't care about that. So you need to get them with something else. And the way to do that is to let them read some of that else, in order to jump on the bandwagon, so to speak. But speaking of titles that get you interested, first of all, everyone listening to this podcast, if you are reading Yamada-kun and the Seven Witches, well, we can't talk anymore.
We can't.
Unfollow me on Twitter. Like, forget it. Because that is now my reason for using the Crunchyroll manga site. Like, I
will always talk up that series. I love that series. I love that author. She just has such a wonderful comedic timing, and she's just so fun. And almost, I feel like her editors push her to be a little more boy-friendly, but I feel like she has a very unisex comedy.
Yes.
Where it's like, and I feel like she does a little service for the girls as well.
Oh, yeah, she does. Whatever. I love her. I love Yamada-kun. I mean, I love Yankee-kun Tamagane-chan, which is, of course, one that we are all hoping will end up on here as well.
So everybody should just read the living bleep out of Yamada-kun, so they just have to go back and do Yankee-kun.
Yes. But Yamada-kun and Seven Witches it's so much fun. There is not enough kissing in manga and anime. Actually, there's a lot of kissing in manga, actually. But there's not enough kissing in anime. So if you watch more anime than you read manga, you're just not getting enough. But Yamada-kun and the Seven Witches fixes everything.
It's like, I heard there wasn't enough making out in your manga.
Exactly! And there isn't. It's true. But thank goodness this manga has come to fill that void. It just makes me happy.
We're going to try to balance things out.
There is a lot of kissing. Because in this manga, people switch bodies by kissing. I'm not going to explain the whole thing because it doesn't matter. And we're not reviewing all the manga on today's episode. But because of that, there's a lot of kissing between everyone. It's like a club of making out, so...
Oh, and of course, that means sometimes guys have to make out with guys and girls have to make out with...
They're not really making out.
Yeah.
Like, we're exaggerating. They just kiss.
Yeah.
But, like, they should make out, though. Some of them should, anyway. But, yes... Girls and girls, girls and boys and boys, everybody. Every once in a while. So, yeah, but I think that's, like, kind of my number one. That's totally what I'm reading. That's what I'm most interested in. And that's what everybody else should definitely check out on there.
I also, once again, I've always been playing up the 7 Deadly Sins. If for nothing else, it is, if I haven't explained this or you haven't listened to older podcasts, there's 2 kinds of heroes in male-oriented manga. Shonen hero and the seinen hero. Kind of the shonen hero has lots of potential but not a lot of skill, and he has to basically constantly level up throughout the series, whereas the seinen hero starts out as like a badass and maybe has to refine his already like honed skills, but he's kind of starts amazing. And 7 Deadly... But every once in a while, you'll find seinen heroes in shonen and shonen heroes in seinen. And this is a shonen manga that is basically just filled with nothing but seinen heroes.
Nice.
So there's no like leveling up. Everybody just starts off as an awesome, experienced badass.
I like that. I feel like there's a lot, not a lot, but some of the best shonen manga it's kind of the in between. They're like the in between character, and that's totally. But like Black Cat or Kenshin, like those are that's what it reminds me of when you say like the seinen hero in the shonen manga. You know, you're like yeah that like so.
So that was fun.
I know I got a specific question from Twitter about, you know, is the Space Brothers manga worth reading if you're watching the anime? And my answer is no. Not because the Space Brothers manga is any less good than the anime, but if you've already dedicated yourself to 80 episodes of the anime, you might as well just keep watching the anime unless the anime ends, and then you could go read the manga. But I obviously haven't read like all of what Space Bros has of the manga up there, but it's pretty much like frame for frame, like very much the same.
I do know that certain people like Ed Chavez have said that they like the pacing of the manga better, but once again, most of the people who I've heard say that really have like been reading the manga for a long time, and I feel like in a certain level sometimes that indoctrinates you to the pace of one thing and kind of makes you upset with the pace of another. But I feel like, especially if you're a big manga fan, I mean, there's no reason not to just dive right into the manga.
I'm not saying
you
shouldn't read it. I'm just saying that, like, if you're continuing to watch the anime, I mean, if you've stopped, I think that you could totally go read the manga. Or if you're, you know, tired of watching the anime, you know, you go read the manga. Although right now the manga the back catalog of the manga is not caught up to where we are in the anime. It's actually quite a bit behind at the moment. So you couldn't, like, you'd be in flux for a while if you wanted to just go to the manga. But my point is that if you have or if you're still watching and we're at like 82 or whatever it is, you know, there's not really enough of a difference for you to if you've been watching the anime. If you've never watched the anime, I think you should read the manga because you can go through it a little bit more quickly, as opposed to, like, I think saying 82 episodes is very intimidating. So if you've been interested in Space Brothers, but, you know, you didn't get into it right away and now it's like a bit daunting, I think you should totally go read the manga because they're very equivalent to each other. They're not hugely different, so.
And you don't get any Hibbit.
I don't know if you don't.
Right.
Because we aren't there yet. So you might get some Hibbit. How unfortunate for all of us. But I am really, it's very exciting to have Space Brothers up there. I mean, I'm going to read it just because, like, I happen to really, really like it. But, you know, I don't think you have to go out of your way.
Yeah, you're not gonna... There isn't, as far as from what I flipped through, there isn't like, oh man, you missed this, like, super important arc, or, like, there's a lot of nuance.
Exactly. It's, like, almost like frame for frame. Very similar. And since we don't know... I mean, of course, if the anime ever ends, which... we never seem to know. It's this nebulous anime that just appears every week.
And we're like, oh no, it's getting to a multiple of 13. Is this going to be the end?
Exactly. You're always wondering. So if it ever does end, I think this is going to be a great, obviously, opportunity to go in. And it's one of those series that you could just pick up the manga where the anime, if the anime ends, leaves off, as opposed to some titles you really need to go back and read the manga because it is just different enough that you might be thrown off. But this seems like you could basically, okay, you know, we ended here in the anime, you can just pick up the manga right there and not necessarily read the whole back.
So it is reassuring to know that if the Space Brothers anime ends, I just don't have to bother Ed like once every few months. So Ed, what's going on, Space Bros?
It is actually, yes, it is this nice safety net.
So we should keep it alive just so that safety net is in place. Once again, not my cup of tea from what I read, but I felt like Fort of Apocalypse and As the Gods Will are kind of more seinen-y and kind of, once again, a zombie title and a kind of horror title. And I thought that those, once again, not our general thing, but might be interesting to some of the readers.
I did feel like they were missing kind of like that shoujo romance, like that big, nice shoujo romance.
They do have My Wife is Wagatsuma-san, but that's really, really shonen romance. It's not.
There's a lot of shonen romance. I mean, there's Mysterious Girlfriend X, there's Suzaku. Yamada-kun is a comedy primarily, but it also has like a little bit of, possible romance in it. But yeah, so it even though I felt like it had I thought that the starting lineup had a good mix of genres. It had definitely an eye towards shonen.
With a little bit of seinen in there.
Exactly. So, hey, what's up?
I sadly didn't get around to Coppelion, but I did notice the art is very different in the manga. Just seeing it. Like, somehow I assume Aoi is still a useless sack of worthless, but I think that at least the art is different. I do feel, well, they're not totally not cutesy. They are a little bit grittier in the original manga. But if I had more time, I would at least like to have gone through that. But I kind of wanted to focus on reading titles that either I loved or didn't know anything about, as opposed to like Mysterious Girlfriend X and like Coppelion, which at least titles I had watched a few episodes in the anime and had a general idea of what they were already about.
All right, now comes the fun part, where we get to tell everyone our wish list of titles that should absolutely get added to the Crunchyroll manga subscription by the end of the year. Okay, just ever would be fine. But I think we already mentioned that, we want Yankee-kun to Megane-chan from the creator of Yamada and the Seven Witches. So that's like priority, man.
Yeah. That series is just so wonderful. And I think that I heard that it wasn't in the cards, but I'm still gonna hope that somebody from Kodansha is listening. That I'd really love for them to finally go back and finish Nodame.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's the perfect place to do it, is the thing. I mean, a year ago, and even like just months ago, nobody would have said Space Brothers will be in English, the manga. Like, it would have been like, no, absolutely not, never, never, never. Like, forget about it. So the fact that that happened makes me hopeful that there are other things that can appear digitally only, and, we can get to read them. And yeah, Nodame. Wait, you don't want 87 clockers?
Okay, at least theoretically, hopefully, Kodansha has most of the Del Rey translations, and they might just have to clean it up. 87 clockers doesn't have an anime. Nodame at least has an anime. And it is about overclocking your computer and entering it in competitions.
That's why it needs to be on there.
Sure. If someone is crazy, if someone at Kodansha just like has major brain damage and before they are carted away to the hospital signs off on 87 clockers, I would love to see it. Because the few chapters that I read were really interesting, but that, as crazy as a wish as Nodame is, I feel that only the insane would pray for 87 clockers. And then, of course, the first title they announced, new titles, is 87 clockers, and I'm like, all right, again. Although that series just recently ended, they could... I was just kidding. Now you're getting like all into... Because she just did start a new series about a jewelry store. And they seem to want new titles. And of course, if Kodama failed, why wouldn't the jewelry store one succeed? It's perfectly great business sense.
I can tell that this list is just like going to go downhill from here into like crazy town. I hope that maybe we can see some sports titles since it's digital only. So give me my Giant Killing. Speaking of series where the anime ended and you really wanted to know what happened and read the manga, that's like really high on my list. Again, and one of those things that will never get a US book release, but this is a perfect place for them to make my dreams come true.
One title that we did get an anime of, that we didn't get, but there was an anime of, I should say, which would be an interesting experiment and a short, so would be Hadaraki Man. I know that has a very small but dedicated following here, and I think it would just be an interesting experiment to see, you know, how well would a Josei manga title do in a format like this.
Yeah, more Josei.
Although it does have a little bit of nudity and sex, but I mean, it wasn't like...
That sells it, Al.
I see.
When has anyone ever said nudity and sex and that didn't make you make people want to buy something? I don't remember.
I'm just saying. But I feel short enough that you don't feel like you're licensing like some 40-volume Josei.
Like Nodame? Speaking of Josei, I think it would be great to see Princess Jellyfish on here. It was a title that I thought, and I think other people thought was going to be licensed. They sort of assumed that we were going to get that manga, and it's never kind of come to fruition. So I think, again, a place I'd really like to see it.
And I know a lot of people who love that show were full of the salties when it ended where it did. So I feel like there is this, I'm not sure how big it is, but there is this definitely group of people who are hungry to see where the series went after that. And once again, it might be another good, if you want something that maybe is a little more ongoing or it's going to have a further readership, that might be a good Josei to test the waters with, although it is a little longer than Hadaraki Man.
Yeah, I think it's, I'm just hoping that we'll see titles that are already licensed in English and out, you know, like they have Fairy Tail and Attack on Titan on there. So that we'll see some of that as well as like all the new crazy stuff that we're thinking of. Because I'd like to see like Arisa or Sherlock Bones up there. Those are two titles that I've been wanting to read, but you know, you always gotta pick. It's like choosing between your children and picking which titles you've been able to read. So I haven't gotten to read either of those yet, but
this might be impossible just because of licensing. But I thought Billy Bat would be a good choice. I mean, it's from Urasawa. He's kind of
That's not a Shogakukan title?
No, Kodansha.
Oh, weird.
But
like any of his other titles?
But I think Viz might have a lock on it because they have his other titles. So I'm not sure that's up for negotiation. They might have sorry there, Kodansha manga. We already have all his titles. But I mean, I throw it out there. I don't know the back end dealings on that title, but I thought it would be an interesting one if it's at all possible.
Also, there's two titles that Kodansha has licensed but are not out yet, and I'd like to see them come out digitally, and maybe that'll ramp up excitement for buying the books when they come out, which is My Little Monster and Say I Love You. Again, because the Crunchyroll manga is clearly missing all the shoujo romance that it needs to make me even happier with it. So bust those out ASAP. And then if I can make a request for a non-licensed one, it's probably going to be 3D Kanojo. And I know you're thinking that title sounds like it's like shonen romance, but it isn't. It's about a nerdy guy who meets a real-life girl, and it sounds like it's a shonen title, but it isn't. It's very sweet. He learns to love in the real world, guys.
Unless somebody's picked it up, I'd like to see Planetace. Go back and, throw that up on there. It was always a prestige title. Kind of could synergize with Space Bros.
That's true. All the science fiction. Hard side, like...
Yeah, and it's out of print, so it's a nice title to be there.
Speaking of out of print, Mushishi, would really be nice to be up there. I think that's something that they should actually reissue in actual book form. But if they're not going to, I think that would be a great place for it to live.
3 titles that I was that they kind of have a license, but I'm wondering if they could once again maybe do a little get hype about was Vinland Saga. I think it would make with the lineup they have there. Once again, kind of like Attack on Titan, you don't have to anything that's been released in the book you can in physical format you can take off. But I know people have been reading. For a while, it was like one of those titles that most people didn't think it would get licensed. So, throw it on there. Maybe if people see the action in the current chapters, they'll go back and buy the physical book. And what do you call it? Phoenix Wright, just because I'd like to sample it without having to buy it. And so I could be like, oh, well, I read it on the site and I did like it. It wasn't just a horrible manga based on a video game. Sure, now I will go out and buy the physical book.
That's so funny, Al. A manga based on a video game that's good. You're so silly.
That's why I want to see it, because otherwise I'm not going to buy it, because the track record is awful.
Speaking of anime tie-ins, I know you were mentioning a few earlier. Kay has a bunch of manga adaptions from different characters' points of view and like side stories and such, so I think that might be nice thing to add. Again, something that has a tie-in. But I couldn't remember if K anime was Viz when it streamed. So I was like, would they be willing to help them or not? But I think that was on Hulu. So I feel like it was Viz, maybe.
Yeah.
So maybe they'd be like, no, that's Viz. They showed the anime. But I don't care. I don't care about everybody's politics, okay? I just want to read my mangas.
One last title I had was, one, just because it's so long, and I've just been getting them from the library, but Sayonara Zezebo Sensei, maybe just a weird enough title that might have a nice synergy being on the app as well. And although Sayonara Zezebo Sensei ended, and his other one about those 4 comedian ladies, maybe since it just started, The Impatient Count and the Time Thief, I think it only has like 3 or 4 chapters out in Japan right now. That might be that would be a title I'd like to read, legitimately.
I think we could do this all day. We just name manga that we want to read. I have my own, I have a Google Doc that's just called the Insane Manga Reading List, which is just like all the titles that I've ever wanted to read, that I've ever heard about, that are all like not licensed in English, and it's like 4 pages long. So I'm sure everybody else has interesting titles. I'd love to hear what people would be excited about if they announced it. Otherwise, I definitely think the Crunchyroll manga subscription is worth doing. I think it's something really special. I think it's heading in the right direction, and I don't think that you'll, be disappointed. Although I would say just at the end, I don't like that if you said that there's a physical book of something, it's not on there anymore. Not sure that's the right way to go, but maybe that also is something that'll, is in flux. It's definitely, it's in its infancy, but I think that it's started off very strong. Mm-hmm. And I look forward to what they're going to be doing in the future, and very soon in the future, hopefully.
So far, well, they could possibly improve things. They at least seem to be doing a lot of good things. They seem to be on the right track.
And it seems to function really well right out of the gate, which is so important for getting people on board. It's not, like I said, I had a few problems here and there, but overall, just the straightforward reading experience is very easy and not glitchy or anything.
Like I said, once I got that app, I was, reading right through Yamada-kun again. So, and I was like, ooh, let me see the latest chapters of this. So, I mean, yeah, it's just so important that, you should not, have to, run to Twitter and be like, how do I do this? Or, how do I get? Yeah, and so that's, bravo. It is a lesson to be learned by other companies.
Yeah, and I just have to say congratulations. I think they've done something really great here, and I encourage everyone to just go get it for a few months. And if you pay for multiple months, it's actually even cheaper. So it's so ridiculous how much manga you can get for such a little price now. So definitely get it. That's our shameless plug for Crunchyroll, even though they don't pay us or anything for this.
And then they should read Yamada-kun every day.
All of it every day. Like every chapter every day. Yes. Get those numbers up, people. Okay, so that's it for this episode of the Speakeasy. If you haven't had enough of us, you should go read our article about Rama Rawl from Gundam The Origin and Gundam Boyfriend / Gundam Build Fighters. We thought it was a good time to celebrate him. He is the focus of the 3rd volume of Gundam The Origin in English, which recently came out. And he shows up to narrate and be a hilarious reference in every episode of Gundam Build Fighters, so...
And what do you call it? I feel like it's only a matter of time before he starts putting the moves on Say's mom.
Oh no, I do not think that.
Okay. This is also, if anybody's participating in Secret Santa and listening to this, you better start watching your shows. Don't wait till the last minute.
Yeah, you should be finishing them soon because you got to get your articles up by Christmas Eve.
So don't be like, man, I'll start it,
I'm sure nobody has, I asked Twitter and 3 or 4 people were like, I've started, but then I sort of stopped for a while or whatever. But I maybe Thanksgiving's going to be the big push, people have days off and whatnot. So get on it, people.
People are with family members they don't want to talk to.
Exactly. Marathon and anime instead, guys. That's totally the socially responsible thing to do. Okay, so we will see you guys next month.
See you then.